A warm welcome to everyone tuning in today for a very special episode of the Treaty Talk podcast. It's becoming a custom every year to celebrate Northern Ireland's success. It was so long waiting for one, and now it's 4 and 5 years for an incredible team. We'll be looking back over that game against Kilkenny, an epic in Crow Park in full, going through the game in detail and the week that's followed, and just an incredible week for Limerick. So stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression the game you get out of it, what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, God, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
What a week, Matt. As I said, 4 out of 5. Just really incredible. I don't think anyone would have believed you a few years ago if you had said to them that Limerick would win maybe a couple, not to mind 4 out of 5. But I suppose a welcome again to everyone joining us today. If anyone has any questions or comments or anything, feel free to comment wherever you are watching. But Matt, try and sum up the week, I suppose, starting with Sunday and all the homecomings.
Yeah, well, Jack, I was in Galway at the homecoming for John Kiely, and what a night it was on Tuesday night. But just shortly after getting there, I met a Clare man, and actually he put it into context. He put it into context, the enormity of what Limerick has achieved. He said to me, "Do you know something?" He said, "You have won more in the last 5 years in terms of All Irelands than Clare have won since the association was formed." He said, "We have only 4 in Clare." And, of course, they forgot to put that in the programme, of course, in Croke Park. But he said, "You have won 4 and we have only won 4 always." And, it struck a chord with me. It helped me to digest, Jack, the enormity of what this team has achieved. It's simply phenomenal. And I think it's in the weeks and months ahead that we will think of it, because I grew up, and through most of my adult life, we were bystanders when it came to 3 in a row, even back-to-backs, even winning 1. That was for other counties, for the Cork, the Tipperaries, and the Kilkennys of this world. And, long-suffering Limerick supporters would have been entitled to have got a bit despondent in the late 80s and 90s, because we saw counties like Galway got back-to-back in 88, 89, and then you had Clare got 2 titles in the 90s. You had Offaly got a couple of titles in the 90s, and you began to feel, gee, our day is never going to come, but thankfully it has come. And we can look back on those days as being dark days now, Jack. But it's fantastic to be living through what we're living at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of surreal, as you said. It probably won't sink in for a while. It's becoming almost like a second nature just to be there in Crow Park and to see John Kiely's men. But I don't think anyone is taking it for granted. At the same time, you'd have to appreciate the players, the management, everyone involved. That's one thing that's coming out of it is, and it's come out of all the successes, that it is a real big group effort. But if you had said at the start of the year that you'd have Peter Casey for maybe half an hour over the course of the year, you'd have Cian Lynch for probably just a bit more than that, but you wouldn't have him after the second round. And to say that you would win in All Ireland against Cork, Waterford, Tipperary, Clare, Galway and Kilkenny, even with the success we've had in recent years, you wouldn't have believed it.
Of course you wouldn't have believed it. You wouldn't have believed it. You would have been saying it's very, very difficult. Like that 3 in a row is very, very, very difficult to achieve, in normal circumstances. And like with that type of a handicap, you'd say to yourself, "Gosh, it's next nigh impossible." But you mentioned there about taking it for granted and all this thing that we shouldn't be taking it for granted. I think a cornerstone of this success of this squad and this management and this team and the players is they're taking nothing for granted. They're really working as if it's for a first title, and just talking to some of them there the other night, Jack and Galway, the appetite is as strong as ever.
Yeah, I think that's a really clear thing.
This is what I find phenomenal, Jack. This is what I find phenomenal. Tom Morrissey said back in 2018 when he was asked about the legacy and all this sort of thing, look, we're a team that are creating our own legacy, and certainly by God, they're doing it. But they're doing a legacy that will be very, very hard to emulate, and but just without singling out individuals, you have to single out Declan Hannon.
I think it's fair.
4 times All-Ireland winning captain. First captain, the only captain ever, to captain 3 in a row. Jack, that'll never be emulated. I said to him the other night, actually, if we were around in 100 years' time and looking back, those records will be still standing.
Yeah, they will. And I think it's fair to stay on Declan for a minute. He's been there. He's one of only a few that have been there, I suppose, over 10 years at this stage, that have seen the dark days, and they were dark, in fairness.
Declan, you're right. Declan, along with Nicky Quaid and Graham Mulcahy, have the longest serving players. They have seen the other side of the coin.
Yeah, they really have.
No question about it,
There would have been a share of people in Croke Park on Sunday that would never, that wouldn't remember or even been around, I suppose, for a lot of the younger generation, the likes of 2010, where Limerick lost every single competitive game they played, and that's not that long ago, it's just over a decade ago.
Yeah.
But I suppose you mentioned them, Hannon, Quaid, Mulcahy, these are the kind of players that were there and drove Limerick to the other side. Just there's so many more, like Tom Condon and Gavin O'Mahony and all these players that were there in the dark times, but it's them 3 boys that are keeping the fire lit. But for Declan, I thought it just said a lot about him, the fact that it was his moment to be the first man to captain an All-Ireland winning team 4 times, and he brought Cian Lynch up with him. There was none of this is my moment and I'll savor all the photo opportunities, whatever. It's all about team and selflessness, and it was a really nice touch, in fairness. I know I was in Croke Park.
Look, Jack, it was an incredible touch, but tis only what you'd expect from the man, he's that type of a guy. He's so modest and so humble, but you talk about his captaincy, his leadership on the field, Jack, is simply phenomenal. And his contribution from a hurling sense is equally phenomenal. It's more than a coincidence, and I have said this a number of times, that the last time Limerick were beaten in a championship game was 2019 when he was off the field.
Yeah, and he was really, really, really incredible against Galway down the stretch, and also against Kilkenny, for Hegarty's last score. Obviously, we'll get on to Hegarty in a while, but just the hands to get the ball out of there, because Kilkenny were raining down a lot of ball into the full back line, and you could puck it in 10 times, and all you need is one to go right or one to fall the wrong way from a Limerick point of view, and it's a goal. But Hannon and co stood up tall, and then just even afterwards speaking, he's just such a good leader. I was with a couple of people that aren't from Limerick, and they were saying, the way he speaks just exudes leadership, always says the right thing, and on the field always does the right thing. And he's probably the most underrated player in the country, which is mad to think for a 4-time All-Ireland winning captain. He's going to have 3 All-Stars by the end of the year. He has obviously the 4 Munster medals, 5 Munster medals as well, but to still be underrated just kind of shows how good of a player he is.
Well, Jack, we're not in the group that underrates Declan Hannon.
No, definitely not.
Far from it.
But there's far too many people in it. But another thing for Declan, and I suppose it applies probably to the likes of Cian Lynch and Kyle as well, that players that had a huge reputation coming up from the underage ranks and had huge pressure on them and have delivered like so often. Like I remember hearing about Declan Hannon when I suppose he's probably 5 or 6 years older than me, hearing about him when he was in Art Skull and then he was in the Limerick team before he's leaving cert, and Keane the same age as me, and you'd hear about these great things, and Kyle as well, like that they've all lived up to expectations. Now obviously there's a share of players that have come kind of from underneath the woodwork, but to have that pressure and to deliver in a county that has very limited success, when you think about it, Matt, I think Hannon has been captain for 36% of Limerick's All-Ireland wins of all time. So to be able to deliver under that pressure, sign of a great team.
Absolutely, it's a sign of a great team, and you can go from one Jack to 15, and that's simplistic. But you can go from 1 to 36. If you see, and look, John Kiely doesn't have to talk about it. It's there for everybody to see the impact of those coming off the bench, and it's just not a coincidence. For the last 5 years, like, the impact has been coming off the bench, year in, year out, game in, game out. It gives you a sense of the entire strength of the squad. Like, you can talk about the first 15, but like, let's talk about the David Reedys and the Conor Boylans and the Cathal O'Neills and the contribution that they have made when they have come on the field, and others, but John Kiely talks about the process. But what it is they've all bought into the process. They're all part of the process. So when they're brought in, they seamlessly slot into the process, and usually going down the home straight in the last half hour, they are fresh legs, and they give that extra bit of impetus.
Yeah,
but you're talking about guys in that Limerick squad. You're talking about guys on the Limerick bench, and even on the extended panel, Jack, they would be first team players in most counties.
Oh, definitely. And one that springs to mind for me that we saw very little of in the championship, if at all, was Rich English. Like, I can guarantee you he's starting for every other county, and then obviously the likes of
That's
Dave
a classic
Reedy.
example of it. A classic example of it. And you talk about impact subs, like, had you to put in somebody in the full back line, what a player to have to come on,
Yeah, like, and
you can't help but feel sorry for Richie, like he made such a contribution in 2018, and then there was an injury and all that sort of thing, and finding it hard to nail a permanent place. But anytime Richie English has been played in the league, anytime he's been played in the Munster Cup, anytime he has come on as a sub, like, he has never left the side down.
No, it's a real luxury to have. Like, and there's so many more. Like, like so Robbie Henley, we didn't really see. Ron Connolly, like these boys, Aaron Costello, and so many more. Like Barry Murphy was on the bench again the last day. Like, if you're John Kiely and you're saying, please God, we have a full team to pick from, you're adding in a Keane Lynch and a fully fit Peter Casey. Like, there's so many moving parts there. But
we didn't mention Colin Coughlin at all.
Yeah, like Adam English.
We didn't mention Adam English.
Yeah, and I think it was a real breakthrough year for Cathal O'Neill. Got his point when he came on there, and finally, he's a senior player now. Like, he's really, lived up to the hype again. So far, it's just it's incredible. Really, I have a comment in here.
That's why Limerick have been successful, and you made a point there a while ago about the like of Declan Hannon, Kyle Hayes, and those coming through the colleges and living up to the promise. We are satisfactorily handling these players and transitioning them from good underage, good college players into county senior players. And I think that is some place where we fell down in the past. We got 3 All-Irelands, under 20s around the noughties, 2000, 2001, 2002, and the expectation was that Limerick were going to sweep the boards at senior level for a decade. It didn't happen because we obviously hadn't the mechanism in place to ensure that those players satisfactorily transitioned from under 21 to senior. And, like I'll always recall the 2015, and I have said this a number of times at the presentation of the All-Ireland medals in 2015. John Kiely spoke at it. Of course, he was the manager. John Kiely has won 5 All-Irelands now.
Yeah.
It must be remembered. And he clearly that night spoke about a plan, about transitioning these players, and that it was a 3-year plan. He said he appealed for patience that night, that it was going to take 3 years for these to make it, and he was absolutely right. He was proved right. Under 21 champions in 2015, senior champions in 2018.
Spoken into existence. I suppose, like, to transition players from their age, when you, I suppose, are coming up from the minors or 20s and you go into a camp that has the likes of Declan Hannon and Nicky Quaid, Graham Mulcahy, Rod Hegarty, Tiernan Burns, these natural leaders, you can't help but fall in line in a good way, and give your all. And like, success breeds success, and these players, I don't think there's an inch given in training, and there will be a high standard, and like, you have to get to that standard, and it's working for Limerick. I had a comment in there from Anthony Brosnan, and he was saying he's supporting Limerick since 1967. So in his first 50 years supporting Limerick, he had 1 All-Ireland, and again, 4 and 5 years he's living in Tip. So he's glad to walk around with his head held high. But I suppose on the game itself, Matt, like, we'd seen the team that Keane wasn't named, and I suppose there was still probably a few that were thinking he might show up on the day, and I think that was proof that wasn't never going to be the case. But I suppose building up to the game, Matt, like, a really surreal experience to be there again with the crowd, the parade, etc. I don't think I've ever heard noise like that in Croke Park that I heard for the parade. It was almost deafening.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. But you see, there was a few things that fed into it. Of course, deep down, the 3 in a row really fed into it, Jack. And this was a chance, to bury the skeptics, let's say, once and for all. And there were a few of them around that said, look, Limerick, 2 All-Irelands, fine, but you've never beaten Kilkenny in a final. You've never beaten Kilkenny in a game that mattered. Well, we did beat him in the quarter-final, was my reply to that in 2018. But besides that, and look, you had a chance to beat him in 2019 and you didn't do it. Those skeptics now are gone and gone to bed, not to come back, I hope. Because they have nothing to come back to unless they try to tell us that we didn't beat London or somebody to win it. No disrespect to London, but look, the colour, the parade, the excitement. There was a lot of tension there as well, Jack.
Oh, there was. Like, I went in
and I think that the tension probably manifested itself, and with the explosion of noise, it all fed into it, because I spent a good while now, I suppose, up to 90 minutes around the Croke Park Hotel, sort of taking the pulse of the fans as they were arriving, and talked to them from all counties, and whilst there was a quiet confidence, I met very little bullishness now, I'd have to say, and that was because of Kilkenny and respect for Kilkenny. And let's face it, Jack, and you'll be talking about the game itself in a minute. Like, Limerick's first half performance was not very far short of the performance against Cork in the first half last year.
No, it wasn't. It just was a couple of goals.
The difference was the opposition this time was Kilkenny.
Yeah, I onto the build up to the game there again. We went into a pub that we'd usually go before the games, and it was full to the brim of Kilkenny, and they were singing, and you're kind of, that doesn't help the nerves. And I was in Croke Park maybe an hour and a half before the game, and like, I suppose I should have stayed out because I just got so nervous, and I was very, very jittery. But then when the roar came up, you were straight into it. Like, from a sports point of view, I'm sure the players were into straight away, but like, it was just incredible to be back there. I suppose the last 2 years would make you appreciate just how special All-Ireland final day is. And getting into the game, we didn't have to wait long for the first bit of magic. And I had said before in our interview with Leo, I thought Hegarty would be man of the match. I thought just he had a big game in him, and he just set the ball. Well, Tiernan Burns set the ball rolling with his free, but Hegarty's goal, and you watch in real time, and I was in the hills, so I was the far end, and you were like, that's a great strike, obviously, to get it in from there, but it's not till you see the little flick up to brush his
The
man
actual
off.
flick up, Jack. That's the crucial part. Now you've hit it. That's the crucial part. That's one in a million stuff, you know.
Yeah, to fight the
And
corner against Owen Murphy as well.
it looks so natural and so spontaneous with Garrod. Like he just, you know, and the layoff by Flanagan, the appreciation that he was coming in, you know, that's the difference between ordinary and greatness, Jack.
Which goal of Hegarty's was better, that or against Clare?
Oh, don't ask me that question. They were both great goals. He's the scorer of great goals. Like
Yeah, he's
the
having his
last
own,
year's All Ireland final, you know.
he's having his own little goal of the year competition. But yeah, that just, I suppose, settled any nerves like that
Well,
Limerick were,
actually,
because
Jack, yeah, I'm a bad watcher of Limerick, and when I was out Ilder during the early part of the year and was confined to watching him on television, you know, I spend more time walking the road than I did watching the television. You know, I'm an absolutely hopeless armchair watcher. But I was quite comfortable in Croke Park, even when Richie Hogan sent over the equaliser. I was quite comfortable in Croke Park. I thought Limerick. I thought that I got the sense, Jack, from very early on after Garrod's Hegarty's goal that, you know, anything that will be thrown at Limerick, I think they're going to deal with it. And like the way they dealt with the two goals and the way they dealt with being being pulled back to parity, and you know, being pulled back to parity, Jack, against the odds. That's the way they responded was just simply fantastic, simply phenomenal. And you know, these are the things you know, that are the difference between a good team and a great team.
yeah,
Like Garrod Hegarty's pick up like is the difference between a good player and a great player, you know.
yeah, he certainly is a great player. On your point there about watching Limerick, I was the same as you. I couldn't get to Parky Queeve or to get ground to the Waterford game, and it's definitely worse being at home. As bad and all as it's been in the ground, it's definitely worse being at home. But
Oh, and look, I wouldn't, I don't ever again want it to happen, you know. But it was foisted upon me. But you know, I just even watching even watching the games in the Munster Senior Cup, like we've been immersed in Limerick for so long now, and we've had so much heartbreak and
yeah,
and so many hard luck stories and genuine hard luck stories. That you know, this is a very, very special time and a very, very special team.
yeah, like that's why I like to go to the hill. What I do, I'm fascinated by puckouts. I just think in the modern game, it's very interesting. But I just the ability to kind of move around the small and just because I was pretty much shaking watching the game, and anyone with me will know that. But on your point there about being comfortable, I wouldn't say I was comfortable, but you got the sense from Limerick, as you said there, that they had control regardless of how close Kilkenny got, or even if they got level, that they weren't going to fall behind. And I suppose that's how important Hegarty's goal was, because 3 years ago, obviously, Kilkenny started like a house on fire, you know, and Limerick never got back level even. Whereas this time around, it was Kilkenny that never got ahead. You know, it's from the over point of view, I know it happened 4 minutes in, but that goal was really crucial.
Absolutely crucial because it did to Kilkenny what Kilkenny tried to do to everybody.
Mm.
You know, it gave Kilkenny a dose of their own medicine. But Jack, you know, summarising the game at the end of the day, it wasn't a 2-point game by any manner or means.
No, what I
Like
would say,
if you extrapolate those late 3 points from Kilkenny, you know, excellent points as they looked, there was a lot of desperation and Hail Mary about them, you know.
yeah, what I have been saying to people is, like, I think Kilkenny played to their max on the day and scoring 226 in Ireland final and not winning is mad to think of. But I still think there's more in Limerick. You know, you'd have to imagine that Keane Lynch is going to make an impact. Not that Limerick weren't fantastic, but you know, you have to imagine that he will make a difference. A fully fit Peter Casey, even if they're coming off the bench, you know, that there is more in Limerick. I would get that sense, but it still was nervy right till the end. And that score from Hegarty from inside his own 65, you know, first of all, it was brilliant. I think Jeremy Burns kind of wins the ball in the air. Hannon gets it up out to Will Donoghue and over to Hegarty. And look, he'd given a huge performance in the first 71 minutes to, first of all, be able to shrug off David Blanchfield, who is no small man himself, and to fire over from the ones of 100 yards. Like, as good and all as the goal was, you could argue that was even a better score.
You could do one of the scores of the for the ages, really, you know, and certainly one of the scores of the year. But of course, typical of this Limerick team, like they keep raising the benchmark all the time.
Oh yeah, I'm just
You
as
see, Rosalind Hartnett is in there mentioning unreal stuff. It's gone off. Gerard O'Dwyer says it's a great show, lads, to celebrate a historic 3 in a row. Keep these great shows coming. We will certainly do that, Gerard.
Yeah, Patrick Silk is on about 4 in a row. We won't get too ahead of ourselves, but like we will talk about once we're finished this match. Like there is, as we said, there does seem to be more in the locker from this Limerick team. But I suppose on Kilkenny, Matt, like they really played their part in the day, you know. Like as good,
they made a huge contribution, you know, and they were outsiders coming into the game. But no, there is no Cody team that comes into an All-Ireland final, especially to make up numbers. You know, they came with a mission to disrupt Limerick and you know, like in typical Kilkenny fashion, but they dug it out, they dug in, and this is the point I'm making, like that, you know, they were pretty comprehensively outplayed in the first half, Jack, and they still were only 4 points down.
Yeah, which was worrying. You have to say it was worrying.
They got 4 very soft points, I thought, in the first half. If you look back at the footage of it, and I said it in real time, that Limerick were a small bit loose at times, and Kilkenny pounced on it and punished it every time. Like Paddy Deegan got a couple of very loose scores, you know. Shouldn't be happening. Now there were 2 others. If you look back on the footage of the first half, I counted 4 points by half time. That in normal circumstances, I doubt if Limerick would give them away. But you know, on the day, I suppose it happened, and I suppose, you know, other teams might be getting the same chances against Limerick, but not scoring. But there were 4 points that I thought were a bit, you know, and of a soft nature.
Yeah, but that's going to happen in a game like that where there's so much on the line and so much pressure that there's going to be, like, I suppose, a bit of that. Like Limerick probably got a few handy enough scores, but like I think the performance of the Kilkenny defence, the full back line was very good. You know, like in saying that Aaron Glancy scored 3 points from play, and you'd probably argue that Hugh Lawler won that battle. That's the kind of player Aaron is. James Hannon clipped over a couple, but Graham Mackay was kept scoreless and worked very hard. But it was kind of the half forward line that really pulled this game from the scruff of the neck. And to be fair to Tom Morrissey and Gerard Hegarty, they did pretty much the same in 2020 with Keane Lynch in the middle, and the only thing that was changed was Hayes at 11, because like Gerard Hegarty will get all the plaudits 1-5 from play, as he should, but Kyle Hayes and Tom Morrissey got 4 each as well.
They were the half forward line. They were simply fantastic, Jack. They were absolutely fantastic. And you know, there were people were talking about that Tom Morrissey was going through a bad patch. Paul was to trust Tom Morrissey to come up in the big day. Tom Morrissey has never left us down. Never left us down. No,
and he seems like another one of these lads that they're real Croke Park players, and Garrow touched on it after the game. He said, you know, he loves playing there, and he has shown that. And his All-Ireland final performances over the last few years, it was 7 against Waterford, 2-2 against Cork, and 1-5. Imagine saying that 7 points from play is your worst performance in an All-Ireland final in a 3 in a row run. It's just pretty incredible. But
it's awesome, but you'll take it all day, you know.
Yeah, I suppose Liam O'Brien is in here with an interesting fact that I saw yesterday. Well, I obviously knew that Timmy Houlihan has won 2 3 in a rows with Limerick. Obviously, the under-21s 3 in a row goalie, and the goalkeeping coach. And you know, the accolades with this Limerick team, Matt, before, like, you would have been delighted to have a Munster title beside your name, and I'm sure anyone would buy trend after Munster medal, but like some of these Limerick players, like Grod Hegarty, for example, now has 4 All-Irelands, 4 Munsters, under 21 All-Ireland, under 21 Munster, hurler of the year, 2 times man of the match in an All-Ireland final. Keane Lynch is all that. They've Fitzgibbon Cups as well. They've Hartley Cups. Like it's just a breed and a culture of winning, Matt. Really, like that's really hard to replicate.
Jack, my favourite holiday spot in Ireland happens to be in County Kerry. Happens to be Kerry, and I've been listening down the years about such and such a fella walking around there with 3 and 4 All-Ireland medals. That's now what's happening in Limerick.
Yeah, it's
Sean Finn has 6.
Oh, 6 what? No, All-Irelands.
Yes.
So, yeah,
221. Tom Morrissey has 6.
Lynch, Gillan.
Keane Lynch has 6.
Barry Nash,
yeah.
There's a share of them.
There's fellas walking around our county, Jack, with 6 All-Ireland medals.
And I suppose we're on medals. Paul Kinnerk is 8 now. 8. I think is he 35 or 6? Like 8 is. I'm just laughing here, like, because outside Brian Cody, is there anyone? I suppose that great Kilkenny team like Henry and them, but 8 All-Ireland medals at that age, is pretty phenomenal. And to be fair to Paul Kinnerk, like he goes under the radar a lot because you rarely hear him speak in the media.
He goes under the radar completely.
But I'm sure that's from the public. I'm sure every one of those players appreciates exactly what he does, because you talk about the process. A lot of that process is coming from Kinnerk, like just a genius of a man. From what I've heard, I've never had the pleasure of speaking to him, but from what I've heard, he's just so intelligent, and he's enabling the players to show how good they are, because there's always going to be talent in Limerick. That's not a question, but it's getting the best out of these players, and he certainly is. And I suppose as a group, and Caroline Curran spoke the other night on the Sunday game, it was great to hear from her. And there is so many people involved in this, Matt, and it takes a great man like John Kiely to put it all together. But we are just blessed.
That's the point. That's the point I'd like to make. Jack. Very importantly, like John Kiely has assembled, a fantastic squad of players, but he has assembled a fantastic backroom team as well.
Yeah,
and there is no one quicker to spread the kudos with his backroom team time and time again than John Kiely. He has always been magnanimous when it has come to the recognition of his backroom team.
Yeah, William Donoghue said it the other morning in an interview. He was just saying that obviously John is a great man, but he surrounds himself with great people. That they're not, these Limerick players aren't potting around thinking, "Oh, this is great." Like they really understand like the impact they're having, and I suppose how blessed we are to have them, and how blessed they are to have each other. Some of those comments in about Cathal O'Neill winning the first. He's second All-Ireland, and he's only 20 years of age. Lads off the bench, Dave Reedy, Peter Casey, Conor Boylan. There was so many more. I had a question there a while ago, Matt. How pleased were you with the bench? You mentioned it, but when the game is in the melting pot, to be able to go over to Dave Reedy and Peter Casey, Conor Boylan, these lads, even the ones who
Peter Casey on the bench, what a place it is to be for a manager, but how soul destroying it is for your opposition. That you need a bit of fillip, and the fillip is being provided by somebody like Peter Casey.
You're following around Graham O'Cahey for the first 50 minutes or so, and you're thinking, God, I'm wrecked tired now. And then in comes an all-star. Like there's no let up from these Limerick boys. As I said, Cathal O'Neill, I think, will be one pushing for the start next year.
We mentioned it earlier, Jack, but it has to be said also. Like Graham Mulcahy didn't score in the All-Ireland final. Graham Mulcahy's contribution in the championship of 2022 has been absolutely phenomenal, Jack. Absolutely phenomenal. The work rate he has put in, and it's just simply like, he's such a nuisance, and he'll excuse me for calling him that, and I'll be meeting him later tonight, hopefully. He's such a nuisance for the full back line.
And that's where stats can be misleading, because you'd look at someone's stats and be like, oh, forward, he didn't score, he got one or two. Like Graham has done loads of work this year, but even Tom Morrissey and Kyle Hayes and Hago did so much work around the field to go with all their points. Darragh Donovan and William O'Donoghue, I don't know if they scored this year, but like they're always giving it to the man in the better position. Like it's not just stats. Like the background team will know the stats to look for, but also know the ones that are kind of misleading, because John Kiely had said against Galway that the work rate, I suppose, was a bit down against Galway, but they thundered into the game and they left everything out there. And again, with the bench there, you can leave it on the line, because there is equally good players to come on in your place. And again, it feeds into having that bench impact.
Jack, I still think, and it's a view I've held from the outset this year, as you know. I think the best team that Limerick met this year were Galway.
Yeah, I thought Kilkenny were very good now as well. But like again, it just shows how misleading kind of the Leinster Championship can be. But again, when teams play Limerick, they bring everything, Matt. You look at Waterford's best performance this year against Limerick. Tipperary's best was against Limerick. So was Clare's, Galway's, and Kilkenny. There's a common denominator there, that when you were playing the All-Ireland champions, that you have to be at your best. And even though they weren't their best, they still couldn't get the job done. There's a point in here from Liam O'Brien. Dave Reedy's point, the Hawkeye decision. From what I can gather, if any of the red line is hitting the post, it's a wide. Because you don't know how it's going to hit the angles. They don't have that calculated. So I think that's why, Liam, would you agree there?
Well, I'm Jack. At the best of times, I'm skeptical about Hawkeye. We have been. I know we got two in our favour on Sunday, but we have been on the wrong side of it. This whole Hawkeye thing needs a serious look at, and I'll come back to it again. And people might say that they can stop texting in there that this is sour grapes or anything. I want to know, why Hawkeye wasn't in operation for the All-Ireland under-20 final.
Yeah.
I want to know exactly, because we lost the game by a point, a controversial point. There wasn't much made of it at the time. It was in retrospect and hindsight when the footage was seen. And clearly, that ball that was attributed to have gone over the bar that Conor Handy Clark brought down wasn't a point. Yeah, I've been speaking to Conor a number of times since, and as late as last Sunday, he's absolutely adamant. And
the pictures justify that case. Like, it didn't go over the bars.
The picture there, the pictures, they verify what he's saying.
Yeah, but I suppose talking about that 20s game, it could have been a very unique double for a couple of the boys. And as well, it was great to see Jimmy Quilty and Fergal O'Connor as well in with the senior team. And it could have been more. I don't know if they've crossed my mind, but
they've had a fantastic year, and Fergal and Jimmy, those two lads now are a classical example, Jack, of making the transition from underage players, because they have been right up along with Colin Coughlin and Adam English through those minor teams, and they're desperate unlucky. That group of players, that they have 2 Munster under-20 titles, because they damn near caught Cork at the end last year.
Yeah.
And they're desperate unlucky that they haven't an All-Ireland under-20 medal.
But we have seen what these Limerick teams can do after losing All-Ireland finals. And there was a nice kind of full circle moment for the crop of 2014 that lost that All-Ireland final to Kilkenny, and they went in as heavy favourites. And even though the wait for a minor title is getting longer, it's nearly on 40 years now at this stage, that those boys have responded the right way with 4 All-Irelands. You're talking about Cian Lynch, Tom Morrissey, Barry Nash, Sean Finn, Galan, these kind of boys that, this Limerick team is very good for responding to setbacks. Like, the last setback they got is 2019, and we've yet to see them lose a game since.
Yeah.
That just the mentality and I suppose like to win 3 in a row needs huge mentality, but their mentality as such that whatever comes their way, they can overcome it, and even if they don't do it on the day, they'll turn around, respond, and get it done the next day. Like they're a joy to watch, really. In how they go about the game. And one thing you can kind of comment on, Matt, is that there wasn't a yellow card, there wasn't a dirty stroke. Both teams went at it really, really physically. But from a neutral, if you were to show someone that's never seen a game of hurling before, you show them that game on Sunday, perfect example of everything that's good about hurling.
Absolutely, Jack, and that brings me nicely onto a point that in all fairness has to be said. The appointment of Colm Lyons was certainly not welcomed in Limerick in a lot of places.
Yeah.
It was much maligned coming into the final. I thought we had a great final, and Colm Lyons more than played his part in it.
Yeah, that's important to acknowledge.
I thought Colm Lyons' refereeing on Sunday was first class.
But definitely, like really added to the game, let it flow and needed to flow, and there was no real contentious issues on his behalf that you were thinking.
No, and Jack, he was absolutely consistent. Like if you could point out an incident where he wasn't consistent, I didn't see it. I thought he was absolutely consistent. And it was clear, Jack, from very, very early on that these two teams were set out to play the game as it should be played. And Colm Lyons immediately bought into it and made a contribution. Now, there's people going to be coming in and saying he sinned off this one and he sinned off that one in the wrong and he did this and that in the past to Limerick. What we're talking about is Colm Lyons' performance in the All-Ireland final, and I thought it was first class.
Yeah, I suppose it's good when a referee's name isn't really mentioned that, he's done a job. So it is fair to give him his dues, and he did a good job on the game.
Because like we would be talking here ad nauseum about the referee if he had made bad decisions.
Yeah, that's
it's
fair enough.
only fair. It's only fair when the guy does the thing right that we should talk about it too, and that we should acknowledge it.
I do think the matchup does help though, Matt, because to be fair, Kilkenny and Limerick, like they don't play each other very often, but when they do, it's always a tough physical game, but never any dirty strokes. Think about 19 was a brilliant game, so was 18, 17, was kind of the start of this run for Limerick, and although they were beaten, really put up to Kilkenny. But even going back to 2012 in Thurles, or was it even 2011 in Thurles when Henry got the goals, or 2007 All-Ireland final, like there's never a dirty stroke between these teams, and you have to respect Kilkenny. And Garrod said it straight after this interview, like the respect they have for Kilkenny. And I did want to say that, like that, saying they played their part might be somewhat disrespectful, but you mean it with the utmost respect. That
absolutely,
if you want to win the All-Ireland final, you want to beat Kilkenny. The best. They're the best hurling team in the country, bar none. And to beat them in the final really solidifies everything that has been talked about this Limerick team.
Yeah, and I suppose saying that you've never beaten Kilkenny, this team hasn't beaten Kilkenny in an All-Ireland final, maybe have some legitimacy for the simple reason that, Kilkenny haven't won almost 40 All-Ireland titles by chance. They'd be going for 38 last week, wasn't it? And, they are the benchmark. They are the kingpins, whether we like it or not. And it was great to get one over them. And you're right. It was, we don't play them often enough, Jack.
We definitely don't. It's a very intriguing matchup because they will give as good as they get, regardless of talks of transition and the likes of Shefflin and Delaney and Walsh and Limmer are long gone at this stage, that they just keep producing. And TJ Reid is, I suppose, the poster boy for that. He's into his, I think he's 35. I think during the week, and he was really exceptional. But we've talked ad nauseum about the game there, Matt, and I wanted to get into the homecomings and all that and potential hurler years, and might do a bit of All-Stars. I know I get about the All-Stars, but if anyone, I suppose I'd ask you in the meantime in the comments, if you are commenting, to maybe who was your hurler of the year, or maybe a short list. But it wasn't the perfect weekend for Limerick, Matt, in the fact that on Saturday, the Camogie team were beaten in the All-Ireland quarter-final by Waterford, finished 316 to 112. I don't think that tells the whole story of the game, that scoreline. But to be fair to Waterford, they were fully deserving winners. Really nice style of play. John Lillis' side never really quit, but better team won in the day, and they will have their say in the semi-final. Waterford.
They will, Jack. They will, and I don't want to detract for one moment from Waterford's victory. Congratulations to Waterford, and wish them the best of luck. They're playing Cork on Saturday, and there certainly won't be a pushover. There won't be a pushover, Jack, if they produce for 60 minutes the performance they produced for 30 minutes in Thurles last Sunday or last Saturday, because they were absolutely phenomenal. But Waterford have 3 or 4 all-stars in that team, and they're the leaders of the team, and you've the like of Lorraine Bray, Niamh Rockett, Beth Carton, Abby Flynn. They're up there, Jack, with the best camogie players that are in the country at the moment, and they were the main architects that Limerick couldn't deal with in the first half on Saturday last. And from a Waterford point of view, and we were beside the Waterford press corps. I don't honestly think that they to pinch themselves to believe what was happening in front of them. Such was the quality of their display. But Jack, the resilience of this Limerick team is just simply phenomenal. Now, with Sophie O'Callaghan unluckily sent off before half time, I think the referee probably had no choice. But there was certainly no intent on the part of Sophia. And we were facing 14 players in the second half, and we're facing a 15-point deficit, and we won the second half. And we restricted Waterford to 2 scores. And, I hear all this thing about Waterford switching off. Pure nonsense, Jay. Absolute nonsense. Limerick just upped their game, brought an intensity to it, and got a penalty. Now, I hate singling out players, but I thought Rebecca DeLee was absolutely incredible right through.
Yeah.
And she got a goal, which is a strong contender, Jack, for Camogie goal of the season.
I was just about to say that if Limerick had won that game, and the highlights package afterwards, you were talking about who had the better goal the weekend, herself or Garrod, but when you lose, it doesn't get spoken the same way. But even the points from play as well.
Quiva Costello was excellent as well, as we've come to expect now. Rebecca went through in the second half, was pulled down. We got a penalty. Claire Keating came up, hit a magnificent penalty. Now, people were saying Brianna O'Regan, who's the Waterford goalkeeper, has a decent record when it comes to saving penalties. But this was sailing for the top left-hand corner. Lo and behold, hit the crossbar and was ushered away to safety. Now, Jack, it wouldn't have altered the result, but it certainly would have given Waterford something to think about and some nervy times on the home straight, because Limerick's performance in the second half was phenomenal. In Sophia's absence, Niamh Ryan went back into centre back and did very well there. And but talking to John Lillis after the game, and John was saying, the manager, and I agree with him totally because I witnessed it. He sort of is at a loss to put his finger to it. How we're having these poor first half performances, because against Offaly and Antrim, and against Offaly, Antrim, and down in the most recent games, we've had poor first half performance and had been dependent on very strong second half showings to win those 3 games. But Waterford, with 15 points and a much stronger team than any of those 3, gave Limerick a mountain to climb. And at half time, Jack, in Thurles, it was a sad place. Tom Clancy and I we were there from Limerick, and in the press box, and I'll tell you, we were down and out. But I'll tell you, at full time, we couldn't be but proud, of what they showed in the second half. But look, it has been a year, Jack, for the Camogie side of undoubtable progress. A lot of new players have got an opportunity, and there is a lot of potential coming through. The likes of Teresa Dorr, the likes of Stephanie Wolfe, Ailby Larkin, Sarah O'Brien, Michelle Curtin. Now Michelle has come up from the junior team, and they're very, very good young players, and there's more of them on the bench, the likes of Emma Kennedy and those. The future is bright, but there is some work to be done. It looks as if John Lillis will be heading it up again next year, and certainly that there has been measurable progress, I think, made. It was a difficult year. First of all, he had to replace up to 6 absolute guaranteed starters. That was where it started for him. And then you had those away fixtures in the league, first 2 league games away to Kilkenny and Cork, and then your first 2 championship games away to Galway and Kilkenny. Not very palatable, Jack. But to come back, I know we were relegated and to Division 2, relegated by Offaly, who themselves were relegated last Saturday from the championship. But I'd take all day being relegated from the league rather than the championship. So, it may not be the end of the world, Jack, that we were relegated to Division 2 of the league. Because it gives us an opportunity to build, gives us an opportunity to get some wins under our belt, which we didn't have in this year's league, and didn't leave us in a very good position for the championship. So it may not be the end of the world. And you must remember the Waterford that beat us. They'll be in Division 2 also next year. They failed to come out of Division 2 this year. So disappointing start to the weekend. A lot of consolation and a lot of positives to be taken out of it, Jack, on full reflection of the entire game and full reflection of the entire year.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think, sometimes a team just fires on all cylinders in the first half. We saw Limerick do it last year in the All-Ireland final where they blitzed Cork completely. And I think, Waterford really hit a purple patch and maintained it throughout the first half, and the game was as good as done. But Limerick, to their credit, responded, and there are some green shoots there. So, as you said, with the league next year, get a few wins under the belt and carry them into the championship, please God, and build on from what has been, overall a very good year. But there was no doubting that Sunday took all the attention and I suppose has taken the attention for the week. We had a homecoming on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's one tonight. And after 2 years without him, it's just what they deserve, these players, to be paraded around Limerick like the heroes they are, because they do bring so much off the field to the county, like the joy on people's faces that they mightn't have had since pre-COVID. It's hard to put into words just how important that group of 50 or 60 people are to the entire county.
It's absolutely phenomenal, Jack, and any kudos that's huddled their way, there isn't enough of them for me anyway, because, this is something that people tend to forget. The sacrifices, the personal sacrifices, and sometimes the physical sacrifices that these players make. They have to put their lives on hold to be county players, practically for 6-7 months of the year. You go back to late December, go back to January, wet, windy, cold nights, and these guys are out, honing their skills, preparing for the championship. And at the end of the day, for all our gratification and pleasure, there is huge credit due to them, and credit to the level which they have brought the game to. And anything as I said, anything by way of kudos or anything that's thrown their way, they deserve every bit of it, Jack. Now, there was a homecoming on Monday night. I wasn't at it. I don't know, were you at it? Were you?
I wasn't. I was working, so I missed it. But I was in town later on that evening. I was sorry. I went. No, I was sorry because I was there. I was not there. I wasn't in town. I was just a bit busy, but I saw plenty of photos and things at it. I would like to be in there now, right? But I got
No,
to there.
there was the homecoming for Declan Hannon on Tuesday night in the Dare,
Yeah, brilliant.
which was a very appropriate. Now, I was at the homecoming on Wednesday night. I was doing MC there for the Galway homecoming of John Kiely, and what a privilege it was to be asked to do it. And up to 7,000 people converged on the little village of Galway. It was an unbelievable evening in the village. Absolutely unbelievable as you would expect. And they came from all over the county. But Jack, the Galway community turned out in such force. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, you can see why.
Absolutely unbelievable. And the Galway GAA club, and congratulations to them for the manner in which they put it together so quick, because they couldn't start doing anything until they knew the result. The way they had everything in order, and the stewarding, the parking, with the help of the Gardaí, absolutely phenomenal, Jack. But the one thing that struck me about it was that they had young kids. Basically they were hoping from under 10 down, under 10, 12 down. They congregated immediately in front of the platform from where the players were, and looking down on them, before the players came even, and when the players came, I couldn't help but thinking, what a diet of success that these young boys and girls have grown up in Limerick.
Yeah.
You just wonder, I suppose, if there's to be a converse to it, will anything that will happen in the future in their lives, will it equate what is happening now, or will it satisfy them?
That's the thing now.
We grew up I'll always remember my first game, Jack, and I've said this before. My first time seeing Limerick was in the Senior Hurling Championship of 1960. I was a very small boy. I was taken down to Cork by a neighbour, and Limerick were beaten 10-9 to 2-1, and I cried all the way home to Glenroe because Limerick were beaten. That was a baptism of fire, if there ever was one.
You did a lot of crying over the next 50 years.
Yeah, well, Jack, I cultivated the knack of being able to withhold the tears or control them, because certainly I felt that, you do an awful lot of crying if you were to cry every time they were beaten. But, just making the point, and if you go through the subsequent years, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 80s, we got an All-Ireland in the 70s. We got to 2 finals in the 70s. We got to the final in 80, but, there was a lot of heartbreak going with it. And then into the 90s. Actually, Jack, it was the one time that I really, really despaired, was in the 90s. We got 2 chances in the 90s. We didn't take either. We lost to Offaly and we lost to Wexford. And as I said earlier in this cast, you had the like of Galway in the late 80s, and then you'd Clare, and then you'd Wexford, and you'd Offaly getting titles. And look, it was despair time, Jack. If I'm honest, I thought we would never ever see it, and then fast forward to 2007, and more disappointment, more heartbreaking. There was a number of years there when the narrative was going around that we should never play in Croke Park, that we weren't able to win games in Croke Park. Thankfully that has all changed, Jack. We know what. And now Croke Park is our second home. And we have actually, Jack, we have made Croke Park for the last 3 years a fortress.
Yeah, and I think a credit to the Limerick people as well, because it seemed to me that it was maybe 65-35 in favour of Limerick, even more in Croke Park. It felt like that in Croke Park against Galway. There was definitely more Limerick people there, and obviously in 19 and 18 it was pretty much the same. But it's not. It's a very expensive day, All Ireland final day. Like, no two ways about it. The ticket is €90 or 50 in the Hill, and I don't know what price it should be or whatever. But credit to the Limerick people that they show up in their droves. They bring their children. They obviously have to feed them and get there, and the price of diesel and everything. That the people of Limerick never found wanting for support in the good times, and especially in the bad times. There was still huge crowds would flock to Croke Park or to Gaelic Grounds to see Limerick. That it's really special to be a part of Limerick now, and it's been shown in all the good light that it should be for the immense passion and support and goodwill and great crack as well. But it all feeds into one thing, and these hurlers are helping to show Limerick in the light that it deserves to be shown in.
Absolutely, and Limerick supporters have never flinched in the face of adversity. And like Jack, it also has to be said that full credit to JP McManus and the McManus family for their unstinting support. Like that this is not for commercial gain whatsoever, and this is not because Limerick are winning. JP McManus has been on board a long time. In supporting Limerick when it was unfashionable to do so, even.
Yeah.
Like he deserves his moment in the sun for what he has done for Limerick GAA as well.
Yeah, to all the McManus family as well. I know there's more involved in the academy as well. That's where a lot of this is coming from, and you hear the slander from JP that he's buying All Irelands. Like you can't buy players. Like they're obviously being looked after very well, and they deserve it. And obviously, every county player should. But you can't deny the impact JP has had on. And again, so grateful to have him. But he's helped other clubs. He donated 100,000 or 3.5 million, I think, to clubs in Ireland. I think it was 100,000 to every county. That he's helping everyone. But credit to JP. He did say before 18 that he'd give everything he had to see them win All Ireland, and he's 4 now. So. Delighted for him, delighted for the people of Limerick. Pretty homecomings.
This thing that JP McManus is buying All Ireland's. I've never in my life heard greater nonsense.
Yeah, it's just
such absolute rubbish.
Who was buying Kilkenny's All Ireland's for him when they were winning?
As I said, there is no commercial gain whatsoever for JP McManus, and. All right, if you could say he was on board since JP McManus is on board nearly 20 years with Limerick. What are these people talking about?
Yeah, and it was definitely unfashionable there for a long stretch of that. Like they won one game in Munster from 2002 to 2012. That's not fashionable supporting a team like that and giving them resources. So. Again, the credit to JP and the McManus family. Credit to all the players. I hope they're enjoying all their homecomings. It's one in Kilmallock, as you said tonight. I hope they
Kilmallock is tonight with at 7 p.m. It's supposed to kick off this evening with a parade through the town. Of course, Kilmallock had 6 members of the squad. They had the biggest representation on the Limerick team. So they should get a fitting homecoming this evening. And
they should. I suppose the only thing for them lads is around the corner, and I'm sure their managers rant them that we have the small matter of the club championship kicking off next weekend. But I'd say let them enjoy their weekend.
And a game with Patrick's. Well, I'm sure Fintan O'Connor will have reminded them of that.
Well, I'm sure all the players will be there, but look.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he will be quite happy to get him back on the training pitch as he prepares for that game.
I'd say Monday now maybe could be a blowout session on the pitch, and then these are finely tuned athletes, Matt. There'll be no fear of them next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whenever they're playing, and we will have a championship preview next week. So stay tuned for that. I suppose I did say about Hurler of the Years, and we might get into All Stars. I know that can be hit and miss, but I suppose the names that pop out to you when we say
hit Jack.
Yeah. The names that I suppose pop up for you when you think of Hurler of the Year this year.
Well, Barry Nash, I thought had a fantastic year. I thought Adam Gillan was absolutely superb, but you know, to me, I honestly thought Dermot Burns has been absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. If you look at it, Jack, you have a halfback. He scores 36 points in 7 games. That's an average of 5 points a game.
Yeah.
I know you're shaking your head. You know, it's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, and to be fair to Dermot, like, you know, a lot of these awards will be based on what you do in Croke Park, and you know, like if you can get your team over the line in semi-finals and finals, that's fair enough. Like, you know, Grant Hegarty has been fired into the like really high up in the hurdle of the year. I thought he was brilliant all year. Don't get me wrong, but Burns, below on Parky Queeve, set the tone
Yeah,
with 9 points and hasn't really relented since.
yeah.
You know, it's
Like
been a very
Dermot
consistent
Hegarty,
year.
Dermot Hegarty. Sorry, Gerard Hegarty is obviously a contender as well. Eddie Brennan, and I wouldn't disagree with him. Said after the All Ireland on Sunday, Nicky Quaid should be a contender for it.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot of names.
I would agree totally with that.
For me, and I'll just go through the comments here. Liam O'Brien, Burns, Nash, Galan, Hannon in a shout, fine wine, gets better with age, cool as ice under severe pressure, but he's agreeing with the Burns shout. Patrick Silk going for Burns as well. We have a stat here that Tiernan Burns outscored Patrick Horgan championship. Probably did. He did have more games, to be fair to him. On Declan Hannon, you know, it would be the romantic shout, I think, you know, for a career that deserved one. Like it's very hard to pass Burns. You know, I thought Sean Finn was very, very good as the year went on. Barry Nash took a lot of the limelight from the fullback position. Imagine we had 2 of the Hurl of the Year nominees from the fullback line, Matt. you would have got long odds for that a couple of years ago. But Sean Finn first, and now Barry Nash, they've just revolutionised the position. I thought Aaron Gillan really was excellent throughout the year. Even when it's not going well for him, he still managed to slip over 3 or 4. Nearly single-handedly won us the game against Waterford below in the Gaelic Crowns. You know, when Waterford were the pretenders to the Crown and the Throne, and everyone was saying they were the team to beat Limerick, and Aaron put him back in their, not put him back in their place, but single-handedly won the game against Galway. He got 6 from play on Dahi Burke. You know, but I'd say it'll go to Patrick's well, one way or another.
Yeah, you asked me who do I think, and that's who do I think, who should be listed. You know, unfortunately, there are only 3.
Yeah,
You know,
I think.
I would say I could say we could fill that list 5 times.
Yeah, you could. Like
And
Kyle took time.
Just before we go away from the final, absolutely fantastic to see the performance of Mikey Casey.
Yeah, I like.
You know what that guy's been through for 2 years, and to come back and play, Jack, at the level at which he has played during this. He came back against Offaly in the league. I think was his first game back.
Yeah,
Simply phenomenal, Jack.
yeah, and you could kind of see the emotion with Mike after the game. That obviously he was an integral part of 2020 and 2021, as was Keane on match day last day. But like, if you imagine, it would be different to be out there, free from injury. You know, really playing your part on the field. It was brilliant to see. Like, and he didn't put a foot wrong all year.
His performance was flawless.
Yeah, like for me, he was the best fullback in the country all year. You know,
Absolutely.
whether he'll get that All-Star again, I don't want to tell too much because you know Sean Finn and Barry Nash were excellent, and Mikey Butler was very good in fairness to him, and even in the final he was solid. I thought Kyle Hayes was slow to get into his role at centre forward, but again, once he got to Croke Park, just outstanding. He was man of the match against Galway, and it could have been the same only for Hego. You know, on Sunday, he looks to be sure of his All-Star, but you know, it's brilliant to have Limerick players in the conversation for best in the country. You know, it was an awful long time that they wouldn't come next time or hear it. You know, and I suppose it comes down to the team winning, but you know, the country can appreciate these players that we're seeing in club action every year, and in Munster championships, that's on the biggest stage of them all, they're showing how good they are.
Yeah, Jack, and I suppose, and we'll be looking at it early next week. We should feel privileged, to be in Limerick and be able to see these players week in, week out now strutting their stuff in the Limerick Senior Hurling Championship.
Yeah, and you could talk all day about the game, and I'm sure it'll crop up, but I don't want to dwell too much on it today. But before we finish, and I want to say this to you now before the year ends, whatever, and 3 in a row was brilliant, and if a Limerick team ever does it again, you'd be I suppose cautious to say that it'll happen again, because it is so rare, and the first team county from outside the big three will say to do it. But we did get that sense that, not that there's unfinished business, but this Limerick team know how good they are and know what they can do. And when it comes to January, you will hear talk of 4 in a row, and they are favourites to do it. And you really couldn't back against them.
No, Jack, you couldn't. Absolutely. From what we saw on Sunday, even though Kilkenny ran them to 2 points, you couldn't. Where is the challenge going to come from? That's the question. Kilkenny threw everything at Limerick, as did Clare in a one-off situation. And it came up short. If you go through the contenders now, Cork have got to change a manager. In that they brought in Pat Ryan. What difference will it make? What will be his approach to the game? That will be interesting. Tipperary have brought in Liam Cahill, even though the whole thing surrounding the departure of Colm Bonner was unedifying, to say the least. Now, Liam Cahill has a track record of success. He's a former All-Star himself, was a good hurler, enjoyed great success with Tipperary, winning an All-Ireland under 20 and an All-Ireland under 21. Went to Waterford. In my opinion, did a decent job with Waterford. Got him to a league final, got him to an All-Ireland semi-final, got him to an All-Ireland final. Not a bad CV. Whether he can rejuvenate Tipperary, sufficiently to be a serious challenge to Limerick, I don't know. Brian Lohan and Clare, have they peaked, just like Waterford? I think they may have. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see. Waterford, as we speak, are without a manager. Most of the talk is that it will be Derek McGrath will be coming back into the job.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what level of influence he will exert. Kilkenny will always be Kilkenny. Kilkenny will be perennial challengers, no doubt whatsoever about it. You get the odd run from Wexford. I think Wexford are still quite short of it. And I come back to what I say about this year's championship. I think the biggest challenge to Limerick's title, and there hasn't been a ball, the draw hasn't been made, nothing has been done about the 2023 championship, in my view, will come from Galway.
Yeah, a lot will change. A week ago, you would have said, Liam Cahill could be in his final year at Waterford, and Colm Bonner will have a lot of players back, and you see how that changes so quickly. Just a few more comments in here. Colin Long is in the Burns camp as well, and I think, he's got into 1 to 10 in the odds. He was named in Sunday Game Hurler of the Year. I think it will go back to Batchwell. Fair play to them for having back-to-back Hurler of the Years. Ashton O'Flynn from a hand there, just saying well done to us. So we'll take the credit there, Matt.
Thank you very much, Ashling. Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear any compliments. But one thing that struck me there, Matt, and you just said Limerick's title, and every now and then it just kind of hits you, what's happening with this Limerick team, and you can't harp back enough the to the dark days, like the days where, you were seeing, could we get maybe a win in the qualifiers, or could we upset someone in Munster, and the dream of getting to Crow Park, and we were there in 13 and 14, and we thought maybe this is the start of it, and 15, 16, 17, then we're kind of false dawns to an extent. But like the last 5 years have just been, it's hard to put into words, Matt, really, and we're again forever grateful to this Limerick side and this Limerick management team.
Absolutely, Jack. What they have done, for the morale of this county, what they've done for the communities across this county is just simply phenomenal. I honestly don't think that they fully realise it, Jack. But it mightn't be any harm, Jack, for us all to reflect and hark back to the bad old days and say we bloody well don't want him again.
No, we don't. And obviously there's that famous book, Unlimited Heartbreak. Hopefully in a year's time you could have an unlimited success, and you could, start with the academy and go for maybe 20 years on. That would take us maybe 10 years down the line, and you could look back on the glory days of Limerick hurling. You don't want to get ahead of yourself either, but we are living in glory times, as Grod Hegarty said.
We're living in very, very special times, and the young people, I would appeal to the young people that, savor every moment of it. Enjoy it. There is another side to the coin. This will not last forever. Let's hope to last as long as it's humanly possible, and it looks like it's going to go on for another while. But we're actually, Jack, I'm of the opinion, and I've seen the Kilkenny team, and I've seen Cork's 3 in a row of the 70s, and I remember the great Tipperary team who won 4 and 5 years in the early 60s, and I honestly think that we are looking at I think we're looking at the greatest team that the game has seen.
Yeah, we'll start.
And I don't say it lightly, Jack, and I'm not saying that off the hip. I've reflected on it. And the teams that I have named, they're Kilkenny's 4 in a row, you Cork's 3 in a row, absolutely fantastic teams. But I think this is the team of all the talents, Jack.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a better team. It's hard to imagine a better collection of players, but.
Jack, and you're among those that are laughing at me,
I'm not.
And people are saying it, when I'm saying that Cian Lynch is the greatest hurler of all time. You just cannot imagine Cian Lynch in full flow. You cannot imagine a better player.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. But I mean, like, obviously the performance on Sunday, but like, it's hard to imagine if you were building a player in a lab, you'd probably build Grod Hegarty, for size, speed, strength, stamina, Hayes along with that, like Declan Hannon, the brain, Again, I saw a very good thread of tweets. It was essentially like mocking everyone, giving out about what JP did for Limerick, and they said that Kyle was built in a lab, and Grod Hegarty was actually born in Tipperary, and they transferred over. All lies. Like it was amusing to say the least. Yeah, like whatever happens from here on in, they are in the discussion for the greatest team of all time, and that's all it will ever be. Is a discussion, and that can be a healthy discussion, Matt, because. We're all GA people, and we love talking about great teams. And thank God we have one of our own. We have a Limerick team that is a truly great team.
Yeah, we had a fantastic team, Jack, in the 30s. With a fantastic team in the 30s, we won 3 All-Irelands in 34, 36, and 1940. We won 5 leagues in a row, and there was 2 of those leagues, Jack, if not 3 of those leagues. I'm subject to correction now. I didn't think that we'd be going down this route. Were won on first past the post basis, who finished on top.
Okay.
Of their group. But we won 5 national leagues in a row. That will never be, that will never be beaten. But, it would be nice to put 5 All-Ireland Senior Championships in a row beside it.
Nice, all right. We had a common dinner, right? The Limerick are going for 6 in a row, but I think for now we'll just enjoy the 3 in a row, the 4 and 5 years, I hope the players are enjoying it. I hope they haven't had to put their hand in their pocket for the week. I'm sure they didn't. And have you something to say there before we finish up?
It's my last say, and I'm going to shut up after this. And I'm speaking on behalf of every Limerick player everywhere, every Limerick supporter everywhere. To John Kiely, his players, his management team, thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, and I think Rod Hegarty summed it up well in Croke Park. He just said, "These are the days of our lives. It just doesn't get better than this," and it really doesn't until we get to next year and hopefully a 4 in a row. But for now, first and foremost, as you said, a huge thank you to the players, to the management, everyone involved in that Limerick team. Very special days, very heady days. It just shines a brilliant light on the county. To the supporters that really kind of make the occasions. It's just really feel-good factor to be around Limerick at the moment, and long may it last. To anyone listening today and commenting and making it more interactive, it's always really good to hear from the people listening in, and to you, of course, Matt. I'm sure we backed Limerick to win at the start of the year. I can't imagine we backed against them, so we've improved, right? Thank God. And for everyone that tuned into, I suppose, the inter-county series of Treaty Talk, that's coming to an end. We'll be back again once the club championships are finished. But attention turns to the club championships, and thank God we get to see these lads in action as soon as next week, because the appetite for hurling is brilliant. And what I will say, Matt, is I was talking to someone last night from Muskegon, and they said they're seeing children with hurleys that would never have had hurleys before. So the impact that it's had on the county is incredible. And it's always good to see children getting out and playing outside. So again, a huge thank you to the Limerick team. Thank you to you, Matt, and to everyone listening. We'll be back again soon. And I'm going to play Treaty Talk, the intro or the outro now, but it's very soon, Matt, that we're going to have a few more clips, probably a goal from Hegarty, one from Hayes, something from Keane Lynch or Hannon, or the likes of Sean Finn and Barry Nash, or even Nicky Quaid. They're
Jack,
rewriting go on.
All the incidents that merit going into the intro or the outro or whatever you call it, if they were all to be included, the intro would be longer than the Treaty Talk itself.
Yeah, they're rewriting history books as we speak, and we are most certainly grateful for that. So again, thank you to everyone, and we'll be in touch next week. Thank you.
Especially in the game, you get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.